Western civilization, Western culture, and its direction. It leads people to serial killer-like behavior, using corporations and greater networks, including the networks that include CIA doctors. Keep in mind, these are valid sources. These aren't some conspiracy theorist book. This is written by a psychiatrist who studied 15,000 pages of MKUltra documents, and he explores the different groups, including criminal groups, recognized criminal groups, and their part in it. This is a book about serial killers, okay? And it is well documented by Christopher D. It combines horrific accounts of the most vicious murders ever committed with the shocking words of the killers themselves. It describes the chapters as case studies. I'm going to go through the first 3 case studies, as that one is where I am in the book, and it more than proves my point. Their body types prove my point. They're big bullies. One of them is 6'2", 252 pounds. The other one is 5'11", 280 pounds, and then there is an Ivy League guy. So we have examples of the bulls, and we have examples of the Ebert, okay, the esoteric kind of Ebert, okay, and his thought process, which is similar to the secret society guys. And ultimately, Western culture is basically a serial rapist culture, okay, on a large scale, with them teaming up together. And they don't want to address the underlying cause of rape and murder and societal ills. They want to cover them up so they're not embarrassed. And they want to redefine how they're done. Sort of soft kill versus hard kill, abortion versus cause another war, using illusion, drugs, trickery, and confusion, misdirection, illuminism, to rape versus forcible rape. Okay, this is the direction they're going, and there's a degree of forcible rape still, because of we're not quite there yet with technology, and some people have a forcible rape fetish, okay, and they choose their jobs and professions accordingly that allow them to operate with impunity in many cases in that regard, according to their fetish. Suppressed sexual desire and no discipline. Ill-gotten gains, women especially, leads you to being mentally ill. You're conscious of these ill-gotten gains, and you're not right. What you're doing is not right. You come from a long line of people who are contributing to this culture that isn't right. They follow the tricks of the trade, right? Women are referred to as tricks, right? Assistants and magic tricks and so on. My lovely assistant. The therapists and the nurses and mental health assisting with the operations, psychological operations, lobotomies and other operations, electroshock therapies, and so on. Okay, immoral, sadistic operations that were used for torture and to discredit people for hundreds of years, in some cases, still being performed today, and called treatments, right? And, mistreatments really is how they should be referred to. So we look at the case of Harry Karasanen. Okay, he had a huge hammer. He was a bully. He killed, women, raped them, little girls at times, and so on. You have Shawcross, another bully. Okay, he's the 5'11", 280 guy. Harvey was the 6'2", 252-pound guy. Okay, these guys basically had unfulfilled sexual desire. There wasn't a thoroughly established social order. The people weren't protected adequately because they weren't really aware of the danger. They had a false sense of security as a result of the lack of a martial arts culture. They have a culture that creates victims and people that can readily access them and abuse them in various forms, people with legitimate power especially. And they do it in a way that's more civilized, quote unquote, and accepted, so they get away with it more often for that as well. You have Michael Ross. He actually went to Cornell, an Ivy League school. He was basically a geek. He had sex with a lot of women leading up to the rapes, and he couldn't control his fantasy. And it was also related to his expectations and his position in the social order, his lack of discipline. This guy is said to have a 150 IQ. So how come he lacked the discipline? He wasn't a martial artist. He had more of a scientific kind of technologically inclined form of intelligence. And as a result, he's acting as a moral relativist, immoral. And because he's not part of a society that helps him get away with it, he eventually is caught. I would assert that a lot of these fraternities help each other get away with a lot more rapes than are publicized in the news. And as a result, 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 women in college is said to be raped, and 1 in 4 women in their life is said to be raped. Okay, so those are the people who are raped in college. 1 in 4 college women raped in college, because it is a rape culture. It has to do with the lack. It's a beta male culture that lacks an alpha male culture, in African culture specifically, because this is where you get Horus as the archetype of Pharaoh instead of Zeus, Jupiter, and Saturn. These are baby killers. These are immoral ideas. They're rapists. They're martial arts. Mars is a rapist. Neptune, powerful deity, he's a rapist. Okay, it's a rape culture because the ideas in which the civilization was formed are rapist ideas. Hermes, Mercury, these are drug-pushing rapists. Pan, which means all. All are going to help with the process and the environment of the drugs, the music, the devil's tune, the cartoon, the core tune, the core of the culture, the essence of the culture, creating the ambience, the ethos, the theme of the society when you mix them together alchemically, so to speak. So these things are also based, on the idea of receptivity to women. Okay, what are women receptive to? Over time, they figure out various ways to trick them. That's part of civilization and creating large centers. Rome, the city of Rome is said to have 1 million people. America has 330 million people or so. China, India, 1 billion people or so each, respectively. So when we look at this thing, the unnatural thought processes and the accompanying or associated behaviors are part of the commonalities of the serial killers. Okay? These are unnatural thinkers. They don't have martial arts discipline. I can't, in all my studies, think of a single martial artist serial killer who's in a martial arts culture doing it. A true martial arts Sun Temple culture, really. A moral-based martial arts culture. Not to, ninjas and these sort of things don't really count. They probably do have serial killers. There's really no prolific ones, certainly. Not like the Ebert Night Stalker. He's a nerd, kind of Satanist, kind of liberal, San Francisco type of guy. San Francisco satanic occult movement kind of guy compared to the geek guy. And notice these guys team up on the left. You have the Michael Rosses and the Richard Ramirez's of the world on the left, and the Gacy's, right? He is this big kind of hippo silly guy. These are the bad guys. There's no question about that. Haru is the hero. Someone like me cannot just go out there and rape people randomly because it's against his cultivation of righteous indignation, which feeds into his martial arts prowess. I use the idea of martial arts prowess to defeat the enemy. I'm not drugged up, unfocused, sex-crazed maniac who is operating outside the divine order, trying to cheat the martial art guy. I'm putting my cards on the table, so to speak, and I'm saying, accept my challenge to everybody. Ironically, Pan's name is All, and I challenged all the other deities and ideas. Anyone who thinks my way would give me my credit and be beneath me automatically. So my challenge, first and foremost, is to everybody else who's not from Horus's temple, who doesn't follow Ra, and that's pretty much everybody else on the fucking planet. All right, so they also have immature philosophies. Their reasons for punishing women are immature. I would also assert the desire to punish women for interfering with the mating process is a positive evolutionary trait, naturally, and especially if you don't even consider morality. Okay? Women doing something wrong in a society and being punished for it, in terms of mating, is a very key part of human nature. Okay? She did something wrong, and she's being punished. The Muslims subjugate them. Okay, the different pagan cults subjugate them. They follow the rules and the customs, the regulations, the traditions, the social norms of the society, or they're punished. Cover up, or you're punished. Be a slut and support our propaganda culture in America, or you're punished. Sleep with someone like Chukwuemeka, and you're punished. You see how that works? You're very likely to be raped like the Black Panthers were. Okay, they're sexually assaulted in prison. You're punished for challenging our reproductive cycle, as well as the social order. So we look at the philosophies. This is a commonality. The bull and the kind of Ebert kind of geek who is not being marshaled by the pharaoh. In my structure, he might very well have fallen in line. He might have understood. He might have had that part of him that is more like me might have conquered the other part. But in a society based on rapist deities and hypocritical perspectives of the lessons in the Bible, you are going to get rapists. You are going to get rapists who reject Haru, period. The lack of spiritual and moral justification for their acts is key. These guys are mad because of perceived their masculinity being drawn into question. It's either Shawcross or Carnison, who was killing hookers, who said that that because of his sexual dysfunction, right, erectile dysfunction. They would make fun of him. That was part of his justification. There's no strong moral justification as he's hanging out with the types of scum that are going to insult him on that level in the first place, right? A prostitute says, you're a Minuteman. A more mature woman is going to look beyond your sexual dysfunction and work with you. She's going to focus on love and not sex. And that is something else that's missing from Western culture, right? It is eros, erotic desire. Cupid, a little sniveling bitch, making people fall in love with that childish porno mag reading part of them being the determinant in their sexual behavior and their reproductive behavior. So there's a lack of complete and a correct assignment of mating and mating roles due to ethnocentrism that is also contributing to their behavior. They are trying to make a violent and specifically evil point. It is wrong because of morals. In the absence of morality, what they're doing is just subjective. Right? Who are you to say that what they're doing is wrong? And that your form of rape is right? There needs to be a well-defined boundary. The boundaries need to be thoroughly defined, effectively defined by intense martial artists. This is wrong. Bunch of martial artists who focus intensely in your face. Yes, I perceive it. Yes, it's wrong. Yes, we're going to punish you. That is the true order of humanity. All right, so the society is fascinated with the serial killer, right? And you have to make the distinction between hand-to-hand combat. Some of these guys had military training. Richard Ramirez was infatuated by his cousin or someone, his uncle or something, who had military training, who talked about Vietnam. One of these guys was also a Vietnam vet. The absence of a strict martial art code in the military and all the corruption that we see associated with it there, helping ISIS and Al-Qaeda and so on and so forth. I'm sure a lot of you kind of question that. So if you want, you can even withdraw that statement. It doesn't change my overall point, my key points, and the fact that I'm right beyond any doubt. Certainly beyond reasonable doubt. Certainly. So we look at cultivation, right? Training. The train of thought. You follow that train of thought to its finish. So we're training people to basically be more effective and organized serial killers who come into groups of serial killers who basically recommend abortion, recommend war, recommend different forms of killing life, and different forms of sexual behavior, sexual sadists, and really unnatural ways of thinking that lead people to have sex in ways they wouldn't otherwise do. So when we look at intellect over superstition, moral relativism, Neoplatonism, nihilism, illusionism, trickery, natural deism without a sun temple, explanation and order, and other common Western philosophies, hypocritical versions of Christianity, and so on and so forth, this is where it takes you. Unless you look at this thing and say natural reason and sense in the Bible, and it leads you to the African Sun Temple martial arts order, Patifra, the priestess of Ra, and you see that later on, history has proven us definitively that these pharaohs later on weren't as noble and honorable as Narmer. They started democratizing his power with Osiris. They started coming with Minhor, drugging. They started using con artists. Even according to Western narratives of morality, we see these things are wrong. The desire, okay, I went over that. So you got to look at the logical assumption. The name of the book is Serial Killers, Up Close and Personal Inside the World of Torture, Psychopaths, and Mass Murders by Christopher Berry D. And I think that about covers it. if I was talking too fast, okay, focused precision striking. Where's a solid example in Europe of focused precision surgical striking? You see it in Africa and especially in Egypt with the flint knives. You see it with the spearheads. But with Europe, we see a lot of brute force weapons, big clubs, broadswords, and so on. And fencing comes way after martial arts has been thoroughly established in Egypt and elsewhere. And this is part of the reason why we live in this society. Love struck, strike, the stroke, different strokes for different folks. How that relates to being loved.